Before we get into this, I just wanted to say that this channel exists because of parents like you. And if you're finding these conversations helpful, subscribing really does make a difference. It helps us keep going and bringing voices into the community. So thank you for being here because it really does mean a lot. Enjoy the video. Welcome to Paul, a home educating dad in the UK. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? How long have you been home educating? How many children and what are their ages?
Yeah, hi guys, nice to be on. So we started home educating in October 2025 for our daughter. She was in year 8, so she was 12 at the time. She'd been struggling, she's autistic, so she'd been struggling for quite a while with secondary school. The jump up to secondary school really started to have a big effect on her stress and anxiety levels because it's a big school where we are here. So she was heavily masking, and she would come home every day and, we would ask her how her day was, and she'd be like, oh, it's fine. And then she'd, like 10 minutes later, she'd be crying her eyes out and inconsolable. So it was really hard for us to sort of keep sending her to school. And then she'd have sensory issues in the morning with the uniform that she wasn't used to wearing at sort of primary school. And that was very triggering for her. So sometimes she'd start the day off in tears and, very difficult to learn from there. So we discussed at the end of year 7 if we could home educate her, and my wife wasn't keen because she doesn't feel like she could give her a good education. And I think something we'll maybe talk about a little bit later is how that affects people. But we kind of shelved the idea for a bit. And then year 8 started and she had the same problems, but probably magnified a bit because second year everything's changed. So you've changed classes, changed teachers. So that was sort of doubling down on her anxieties and stuff. So she continued the same pattern. She was really struggling. And then we sort of made the decision that, if she is going to get an education, probably the best chance we're going to have is to take her out of school and give her the sort of space and the time and the headspace that she needs to learn, sort of in a more relaxed environment. And it's been a big positive.
A lot of feedback from everybody that the jump from the primary into secondary is just it's too
Yeah,
too much, too much,
yeah,
too many expectations and routines, and the timetable is quite
yeah,
um
and sort of the stricter rules and stuff. So
yeah,
where she her primary school, they kept the same class together for all of those years, which is quite unusual, but they never changed class. So she sort of grew up with all the kids that she knew,
yeah,
teachers that she knew very well. So while she's been autistic, we got an official diagnosis, but we've known she's been autistic from a very, very young age, maybe 2. She's had like stimming and that sort of thing. So we knew there was something that wasn't quite right. But due to the familiarity of that friend group all the way through primary school, it kind of helped. Although she had good and bad days, but yeah, the step up to secondary school, completely new friend groups, completely new classrooms, and she all of her friends were put in different classes and stuff. So she was very, very anxious, and
mm,
she didn't really have that support.
yeah,
What the school did have is quite a good SEN provision. And they, to be fair to them, they really did try and listen to the problems that she was having. We went up there quite a lot, and they were really receptive to the problems. But the school's just too big. It's just too much for them to cope with. And I think there's too many children with sort of SEN issues to cope with, really. So very, very difficult.
and so what does your average day look like as a home educator?
Yeah, so when we decided to do the home education, as I say, my wife was very nervous about it because she felt that she couldn't be a teacher to Amy. So she was very scared about what we were going to do to her, and we gave Amy a lot of time to decompress from school. So they talk about the sort of the deschooling. So unofficially, we did that and let her get that out of her system. So that took a couple of months, and during that time we were able to kind of do a lot of research. Quite amazed, to be honest. Like, you kind of feel when you take your child out of school, you kind of think it's quite unusual and nobody else is doing this, and you're kind of like a bit worried. And then when we actually started to look into it seriously, the amount of groups like yourself that are on Facebook, and the amount of online lessons as well was something we'd never even thought about. And then when we looked into it, there's quite a few providers that we researched and we liked. And then all of a sudden it was like my wife didn't have to be the teacher. So she was working then purely as like a support to her daughter. And the online lessons were providing her with the education. So again, we were just quite astounded really, especially when once we got into those online lessons and you see the amount of kids that are in those lessons as well. I mean, it's all obviously online on Zoom or whatever, but there could be anything from 10 to 30 children on there learning, and you realize
Really?
how big of a scale this is in the country. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of children that need this sort of support outside of the school system.
Yeah. And what do those online sessions look like? Like how frequently I mean, I know it's probably individual to each person, but
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a range really. I mean, you can go sort of very one-on-one, so you can get a personal tutor that will do an online lesson. We didn't like that because, again, the autistic side of it is very difficult to deal one-on-one with a person. It's very intense, and to a point I'll come to in a second about how we changed how we do those online lessons. But the providers that we found, they have a massive, I don't want to use the word curriculum because obviously we're outside of the school system as such, but they have a massive range of varied lessons, everything from sort of English, maths, and science, all the way through a gamut of really interesting hobby-based kind of things.
Mhm.
So, you've got your art, but specifically one of the lessons that Amy does is anime art. So, she's very heavily
Oh,
into
wow.
anime and she makes that connection. So while at
Yeah.
school you'd be doing sort of the classics and Van Gogh and Rembrandt, she's
Mm.
got a connection straight away with a teacher that loves anime and he's teaching them sort of anime techniques, but within that they're learning art
Mm.
techniques.
Mm.
So that side
That's
of it's been
lovely.
really good. Yeah, that side of it is really good and connected with her. So we started off those lessons doing them live. So they're created at set times and they run at set times with the same teacher every week. And as I say, that class can have 10 to 30 children in it, but everybody's muted. So whilst you can kind of see a preview of the kids, there's not that noise, there's not that pressure. You kind of know that there's other people there, but you're not getting constantly bombarded by noise. So that was really good. But even then, we found that Amy struggled with her autism to keep up with the lesson, to sort of, while the teacher's talking about something, you're supposed to be writing something down. And she found it very difficult to sort of, she found it quite pressured. And knowing that the lesson was only sort of 55 minutes long as well, she's like, I've got to finish this, I've got to finish this. I've only written one line. And so we found it quite pressured. But again, the beauty of home education is that we made a decision then that, those lessons are on catch up as well. So what we did then is switch those lessons to catch up. And while it takes her longer to complete them, it might take her an hour and a half, 2 hours to complete an hour lesson. She's enjoying it so much more because she's
Mm.
taking her time. And so my wife's there supporting her, quite often joining in and sort of enjoying some of the lessons that Amy's doing as well. So yeah, we found, I mean, there's sort of a phrase of finding your rhythm, but we have found what works for us. And, Amy gets through 3, 4 lessons a day. Sometimes they're quite heavy, so sort of English, science, and maths sort of based. So they're quite heavily based in the classic classes. But other times it's sort of more relaxed, like more artistic or baking. She does a lot of sort of social lessons as well. So it really does give you the chance to have that mix of things and not the pressure of, right, you've got geography now, you've got to learn
Mm.
this, and you know you can really hone in on what they like. So I guess it's the child-led learning more than anything that we've done. It's
Yeah.
not always a success either. We kind of like, we've been through a cycle of lessons that didn't quite stick as well. So again, you get that freedom of choice to sort of focus in on something. And now, while it may not be a traditional kind of lesson that you would have at school, can't think of a great example, but everything that every class that the child does, you're listening, you're writing, you're thinking. So all of those things are, whether it's about whether it's traditional English literature or it's about Taylor Swift or something. You're always involved
The same skills.
in
Yeah.
learning bits. Yeah, so that's what we found. So that's really working for us.
And it's
Okay.
nice to have that flexibility. And as you said, why not do a particular art that you are interested in and that you find engaging
Exactly.
rather than
Yeah,
doing something that was probably put into the curriculum years and years and years ago.
exactly.
So,
Mm.
Yeah. So what I mean, one of the early lessons that she did do was it was a English lesson, but based on Harry Potter. So they
mm,
would read excerpts from the book. They would write their own sort of fan fiction. They would watch clips of the films and then discuss them. So whilst it again probably wouldn't be something you'd get in traditional school, it was something that interested her, and it was still based on those English foundations. So we knew she was getting, handwriting practice and comprehension practice, but she didn't realize it. It wasn't as dry as like, an
mm,
English literature lesson.
yeah.
So that stuff's really helped her.
And I guess she's enjoying it, so she just keeps going back for the either the
Yeah,
catch up or the live sessions. She
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, she looks forward to the lessons now rather than sort of being fearful of going to school and sort of wondering what she's got. She's looking forward to certain lessons, and we still have up and down days. I'm not going to
mm,
sort of say
mm,
every day's full of roses. I mean, but things that really help, like I said about the uniform, would trigger her, so she'd start off in a really bad mood. But home educating, she can wear her pajamas, wear shorts, dress up
Mm.
really nice, whatever she feels
Yeah.
comfortable with that day, gets her in the right mindset to then start
learn.
learning.
Yeah.
So all of the things, I mean, we've been genuinely amazed. I mean, as I say, it's been since October 25, and her personality is just, she has just come out of herself, and she's confident and happy. I mean, and that's all you can ask for your kids, I think, is that they're happy. And to see her struggling at school so badly was obviously quite upsetting. But to see her now, see how she's sort of grown and flourished, yeah, we
Yeah.
sort of really happy we made the choice.
Yeah. So you definitely are pleased you made that decision.
Yeah, yeah.
What does her
That's right.
masking
Nice
look
one.
like? Has it got it significantly better, or what have you noticed with
Yeah.
that?
And we noticed it quite early on as well because, as I say, we'd ask her how she was and she'd say, I'm fine. And you know that they're not. You can
Mm,
tell that they're not fine, but that would be her default. Or she would like have this sort of fake smile where there's nothing happening with the eyes, sort of thing. And she would be very people pleasing. So she would always kind of agree to do whatever people wanted, even if she didn't really want to. But we noticed maybe at the start of this year, sort of around February time, we would ask her to do something and she'd say no. And we'd be like, okay, that's fine. Like that's different. And then you sort of dig into it a bit more, and she's like, no, I don't want to do that because I feel quite overwhelmed at the minute. So I'm going to have
That's
like
that's
amazing.
20
brilliant.
minute break,
Yeah.
and then I'll maybe think about it again. And we was like, wow, that's she
That's
dropped the
great.
mask
That
basically.
communication.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah. So
beautiful.
it was really nice just to have some pushback as well, but knowing that it's coming
Yeah.
from a good place, knowing that she's looking after
Yeah.
herself
Yeah.
rather than just agreeing to everything and smiling and saying she's fine. Some days she would say, look, I'm really struggling today. Can we push that, start of the lessons back to 10 o'clock, and I just want to, watch some YouTube videos or something. And we'd be like, yeah, that's fine. Because there's no point pushing them into it because they won't go into it with the right mindset. And we've
No.
had, I mean, I've put it on the blog of the website that we'll talk about maybe, but we've had days where we haven't been able to do lessons because something's either happened in the morning that's triggered her or something in the lesson, that's knocked her confidence. And you can tell that she's really struggling. And sometimes we've just said, you know what, we're not going to learn anything doing this right
Mm,
now. Let's shut it all down and let's maybe go and play a game or let's go for a walk. We started swimming as well to sort of cover off her PE requirements. So, we've been swimming. And you find even just that short break, an hour or two, mindset changes, and then she'd be like, right, I think I want to try, I'll try reading now, and I'll read a couple of chapters to you, or I'll finish off that maths lesson that we were doing. And just being able to do things like that, you just know that they're actually then going to take it in rather than have to
mm,
sit there like she probably was at school, sort of head down, head full of noise of,
mm.
and just not being able to concentrate anyway. So, what is the point of forcing them through that? So, yeah, again, just really happy we made the decision and happy that she's been confident enough to drop that mask now she's got the chance to sort of relax and be herself.
Yeah, you've created that space where she feels regulated, which is
Yeah,
incredible.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and it is a big thing. I mean, like, we've tried a lot of things, and I guess this is what a lot of parents do when you homeschool is you kind of, we set up kind of a traditional table for her at the kitchen table. It was, she's got a computer there and a nice big screen, all her writing accessories and stuff. And, we started off with that, okay, and then that felt a bit formal. She was a bit like, well, I don't like you sitting right next to me watching me do stuff. So can you sit kind of over there a little bit? And if I need you, I'll ask you. And just like stuff like that, as it's gone on, she's just got more confident to get comfortable with it. Sometimes she'll be like, I'm going to do my art today, but I want to use my iPad to do the drawings on. And I just want to sit in the front room and do that. And I'll watch the lesson on my, laptop or whatever. And it's like, fine, yeah, that's fine. So I think she likes a mix. She likes the freedom to be able to get up and walk around. So yeah, just creating that environment where they're comfortable. And every child with neurodivergent needs will probably need different things. But for
Yeah.
her especially, we listen and we give her the best chance of being in an environment that she's comfortable with as possible.
What's the biggest myth about home educating that your lived experience has completely destroyed?
Yeah, I guess coming back to the teaching thing, like when you think about homeschooling, you think, right, they've got to do the English, maths and science. And while we have done that, it's not a necessity. There is learning all the time, and you don't have to be so structured and rigid as stick to a curriculum. So just, I think the freedom of home education is kind of what we didn't expect, and that is probably the biggest eye-opener that we've got now, is that we've got that freedom. And I talked about deschooling earlier. It was as much for us as it was for her as well. So we've learned a lot in those months to sort of make sure that we're doing the right thing as best we can, or as best as we think we can. So yeah, in terms of the myths, I guess you sort of have this image of home education where it's very much all day long. It's 9 till 3. It's head down, doing lots of writing and sort of teaching, having to sit with your kid and have textbooks and mark all their work. But we, as I say, we found a lot of flexibility that is out there. And again, you learn as you go on. You find new resources. You look at Facebook groups. You look at podcasts and stuff like that, and you realize there is more out there than what you initially think. So yeah, I would just say if people are considering it, then maybe do that research first, because we probably did it the wrong way around. We probably took her out of school too quickly because we panicked and could see she was suffering and wanted to sort of stop that suffering, and then we did the research. So maybe you have a look around first and realize that there are these sort of online education groups out there and online lessons, and you don't have to worry that you're going to have to be the sole sort of teacher. You can work in a supporting role, but the education can come from elsewhere.
I think a lot of parents worry about that. And I think a lot of parents worry about how would they juggle work and doing it as
Yeah,
well. And that's been really interesting, talking to other parents and how they
yeah,
manage their work life. Most of them actually working from home,
yeah.
and then sort of managing, like you said, the home education side as well.
Yeah, it's probably a big factor because I work from home anyway, but I have quite a sort of a stressful job. So I would find the time to be full-time educator quite difficult, even though I wanted to, and I do some of the lessons with her. I wanted to be a part of what she was doing. So
Yeah.
I'll do like a maths lesson with her each week and sort of help her with that. My wife is actually not working, so we are in kind of a bit of a privileged position where she could spend all the time that Amy needs with her. So I can understand if people are working, and certainly not working from home. You've got that difficulty then of how do you manage the home education? The lessons that are online, if your child's sort of old enough perhaps to be left alone, and maybe you're confident enough that they could work on those lessons, then maybe that's an option. But yeah, certainly for younger children, then it is a difficult thing to get around, I guess. But with the flexibility, I'm sure people could work in the evenings with their kids a little bit. And I imagine if you speak to your employers as well, they would give you some flexibility to have some time during the day to help out. But yeah, we understand we're in a very lucky position to have the time to be with her.
I think people make it work though, as you say, because it is a
Yeah,
lifestyle decision, and actually
exactly. Yeah,
it works. Everybody's journey is different, and I think that's what's so
yeah,
cool about it, is that like you said, that's not working, so we'll change it. Let's do something different. And
Exactly. Yeah.
that's the beauty of it, really. You can grow into it, can't you? And sort
Yeah.
of, also do things as a family and learn.
Yeah, exactly. So we go out for walks, or we'll play a board game or something, or even just to sit around and talk is something we never used to do really. She'd come home from school, say normally 9 times out of 10 breakdown, and then go and need a couple of hours of solitary sort of, just to get herself okay again. And by that time it's getting on towards the evening. So yeah, just have the chance to all sit down and discuss a topic, or once the lesson's finished, I'll usually go back into the house and discuss what they've done, and then that might spark a conversation. Especially if it's a bit more sort of involved. She was doing psychology for a while, so a lot of good discussions that we have, and just to sit around and chat is really nice. So yeah, those opportunities are great.
What advice would you give to other parents starting out?
Yeah, I would say listen to your child and really listen. If they are struggling at school and you do think you've got the capacity to educate them at home, then start looking into it and consider it. It's not a scary thing to actually take your children out of school. We sent we spoke to their SEN provider and said that we were considering it, and they unofficially backed the decision as such. They said, there's not much we can do. If that's your decision, that's fine. We didn't really get any pushback from the school. We sent an email to the headmaster, and the reply was basically, not a problem, good luck. And that was basically it done, on Friday. And from Monday she was not at school. So don't be worried about approaching the school and discussing home education with them. Listen to your children, and give them the best chance to learn. If they are struggling at school, obviously speak to the SEN people at school and see if you can get some help there. But if not, consider home educating them. And I would say just look online, because as I say, we were really surprised by the amount of stuff that's online. So there's no end of help and information and guidance, people willing to help as well. Like some of those groups on Facebook have got like 150,000 members on that are based in the UK. There's a lot of support out there, and a lot of people willing to help. So lean on that as much as possible, and yeah, just take your time and create environments that are going to help your child. Just be prepared to sort of pivot a lot.
And did you want to share your system that you've created? Your
Yeah.
platform?
So going back to the start of the story. So in October, when we pulled her out of school, one of the things that she was concerned about almost immediately, when we sort of tried to broach lessons for that day, she was very anxious about what was happening. She's like, oh, well, what am I doing today? And we'd be like, well, don't know. What do you want to do? We'll maybe read a book or do some English. She's like, but what exactly are we doing? And I sort of dug into it a bit more with her, and she had an app from school. So the school provided an app with a timetable on it, and she would check that every day and know in her head what's expected. So again, people listening with autistic children might sort of recognize this, but she'd be like, right, I've got English then, and then PE, and then science. Right, I know what I'm doing. And she needed that sort of check. So I was like, right, okay, I'm a sort of web developer by trade. So I've done that for the last sort of 25 years. And I was like, right, I can make you something. I'll make you a simple timetable. And, we can put the lessons on there for you, and you know what's happening. She was like, oh, great. Okay. So I made that, sort of showed it to her, and she was like, oh yeah, perfect. I can know what I'm doing now each day. That's great. And then I'd be like, right, well, we need to be able to update that easily. And ideally, my wife needs to be able to update that easily without having to keep updating it. So then I was like, right, I'll build a little management system so she can add the lessons each day. And we did that. And then she was like, well, okay, well, how about if I can look at the whole week and see what's coming up in a longer plan? All right, I'll make that. And then, right, well, it'd be really good if like Amy could review the lessons as well and see if she enjoyed it. Right, okay. So it just went on and built up and built up into this kind of monster system that I was spending, pretty much all of my time outside of work making. And they started using it daily, and it was really helpful because it kept track of what they were doing. They could upload the work that Amy had done, sort of, so they've got a view of what she was actually achieving and everything. And that kind of sort of fed in when we heard the dreaded words of sort of the local authority, and having to have evidence of what your child's doing. We was like, well, okay, this is ideal because we're collecting this now. It's not sort of in a notebook somewhere that we've got to search through. We've got one place where all of the information is saved, and if we need to, we can pull out that and write a report up if we need to for the LA. And then we was kind of sitting there thinking, quite a few of our friends that have either homeschooled before or are thinking of homeschooling, and we were like, oh, we've built this thing, would you like to try it? And they agreed, and they all liked it, and they were using it as well. So we realized, there must be a community out there of people this might be able to help. So so I spent the rest of the time sort of making it into a system that can be handed out to other people, and sort of made a website to sort of promote it, and we put our blog on now. So if people want to have a look at that, it sort of shows our journey from October and how we sort of made those pivots, and then how we came about making the system. But it's not all about the system. There's a lot of stuff about our neurodivergent challenges on there, and different things. So hopefully it's quite an interesting read for people to see the journey that we went through. But we're going to be rolling the system out very soon for people to use, so they can sort of sign up and trial it for a little bit. We'll just see how it goes, and looking for any feedback from people, and just hope it helps others that were in our situation as well to have that organisation and confidence that they can keep everything centralised. Because like I said earlier, you've got these online portals, and we use 2 or 3 different ones for lessons. And those links to the Zoom lessons and stuff can get they're in emails, they're in different places. But now if we add a day's worth of lessons on, we can add the specific ones in, and Amy just has to go onto the timetable, click the lesson, and it will automatically go to that whatever Zoom call that one is. So it has helped, and it's taken a lot of stress off the household as well. As I say, we're not scrambling for notes and stuff, so everybody knows you just log in and look on the system plan ed, and everything's there, what you're doing, and what you need to do. So just hoping it helps others.
Yeah, I think a lot of parents would find that very helpful.
Mm-hmm. I hope so.
Well, I think especially coming from a parent who has lived it and testing by your daughter, it sounds like she's very good at saying what she wants and what she doesn't want.
Oh yeah, she was very. I mean, as we were growing, she's like, "Oh, I'd like this to be like smiley faces when I review it." It's like, okay, that's fine. So it's quite visual for neurodivergence as well. So I mean, we've lived it. It's not sort of a cynical, system that's been thrown together. It's like it's organically evolved as we've needed to add new things to help us. We've added to it. So hopefully it helps others. Cool. Well, thanks for your time, guys. Really appreciate it.
And you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.